Lucas Valley Road. It's not George Lucas.
No.
It's John Lucas. And John Lucas was an early pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
And there used to be a Lucas Ranch out here. You know, it is a legitimate name. But I think George partially bought the property out here because of the name.
Because of the name Lucas.
The street here, the road.
When was the last time you went to Skywalker Ranch?
With me? Yeah. Oh, it's about 4 years now. 4 years. So I have deliberately not gone out there. They want me back for a few little things, but it's just too much.
Yeah.
George's property actually starts at this fence here. There's somebody in there doing something.
Yeah.
So we still got 6 miles to go, but this is the fence for Lucas's property. Back in there, he was going to put ILM and everything, but now they've bought all that property over for Presidio. George Lucas is not a technical guy, but he has these ideas that this should be possible.
Up to that point, buttons were something physically that you touched. You reached over and you pressed it, or you pulled something with your hand, or you flipped a switch or something.
Ik geloof dat hij iets van minimaal, ik geloof iets van $40 miljoen heeft gestoken in de ontwikkeling van de EditDroid.
He's been to New York and Chicago and up through Canada and down to Texas. I was a sound engineer. 1984. And I was a specialist in sound. And he's been to the Lucas Ranch many, many, many times. They know it. I have several patents in the electronics area in devices relating to sound.
Ik ben in 1968 ben ik naar Amsterdam gekomen en ik ben daar naar de Filmacademie gegaan. Ben ik in 1972 vanaf gekomen met montage en geluid als mijn hoofdvakken. En in 1985 ben ik vertrokken naar de Verenigde Staten. Ben in Californië terechtgekomen in Marin County, waar Lucasfilm zit en ILM.
All we see is ourselves younger and younger.
That's right.
My name is Ben Burt. I'm a filmmaker. Although I majored in physics in college, I decided to pursue education in filmmaking in graduate school. I went to the University of Southern California Film School from 1971 to 1975. Directly from film school, I was hired to work on the very first Star Wars movie. I became a member of Lucasfilm, and for 10 years I was a staff sound designer and mixer. The last 7 years I've been doing the Star Wars prequels, episodes 1, 2, and 3, and I've been the picture editor as well as the sound designer and supervising sound editor.
George Lucas is not a technical guy, but he has these ideas that this should be possible.
He's the kind of filmmaker that really wants to have control over everything. And the older technologies required a very large supporting team, many different specialists in many different areas to make a movie. And he'd really like to be able to do it all himself. He loves to experiment. He loves to try a film many, many different ways. a cut many different ways before he'll settle on something. So to him, he's always wanted alternatives. I was not present when the idea for the EditDroid was first proposed.
In het begin van de 80 jaar is George Lucas begonnen met het ontwikkelen van een montagesysteem, omdat tijdens het monteren van Star Wars zag hij hoe ontzettend moeilijk het was om dingen te veranderen.
George Lucas created a company called Droid Works. They were to develop a computer controlled or nonlinear sound editing system called the Sound Droid, and a nonlinear editing system called the EditDroid.
One of the engineers who worked on the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest knew me, and he asked me out for an interview at the ranch, and I became the EditDroid coordinator, which was a sound droid to begin with, and then the EditDroid, it developed from that.
Film was nog steeds heel mechanisch. Het is ontwikkeld in de zeg maar 1900 en er is niet veel aan veranderd sinds die tijd.
On film, often an editor, if they want to make a change, they want to find a new take of a shot. And so that take might be a little roll of film in a box way up high on a shelf. And to find it, you would have to look it up in a catalog, get a ladder, climb up the shelf, pull the box down, open the box, take the tape off, take the film, roll it onto a reel, then look at it and say, oh, I don't want that one, okay? And that task might take 10 minutes.
He set up this group and said, get the job done.
Ik geloof dat hij iets van $40 miljoen heeft gestoken in de ontwikkeling van de EditDroid. En uiteindelijk heeft hij dat geld natuurlijk nooit teruggekregen, maar ja, dat was niet voor hem belangrijk.
No one came and sat on my back and said, don't buy this or don't buy that. I mean, we bought Sun computers in those days. We bought tape machines. We bought the disc players. We had no. We had to stay within certain constraints, I guess. I don't recall ever feeling that there was a budget restraint on our development. I talked to dozens of editors. And my first job was simply to talk to these people, make sure that we came up with a picture editing system that would transition from moviolas and chems and traditional cutting machines into the digital world.
You had a switch and a rotating controller, like a throttle. It had a neutral position where the image would stand still on the screen. And then as you moved it forward, the image would speed up until you reached the proper playing speed. And if you went really far with the control, you could zip, you could fast forward or rewind through material. So you controlled the image in front of you with this touchpad controller.
Everything in one hand, cut head, cut tail, splice, and you would have a video source and the result of your cut on another monitor, and then you would see what you were doing on another screen, very much like looking at a computer.
You had a graphical interface which had a timeline, and you had a picture track, and you had 2 audio tracks.
Editors in that time were, back in the 80s, the early 80s, mid 80s, were very leery of digital type editing or anything that wasn't pure film.
And it represented the view that you would have in traditional film editing if you were on a bench with rewinds and a synchronizer, which was a device which locked the picture and the tracks together. It was to give the editor something familiar to the film world that it was replacing.
Het probleem met de EditDroid is altijd geweest dat het gebaseerd was op videotechniek, dus op tapemachines. Met tapemachines is het nadeel dat ze vrij langzaam zijn. Je kunt niet snel dingen opzoeken. Toen ineens kwam de nieuwe techniek van laserdiscs. En dat begon een klein beetje te komen in de richting van wat George wilde doen. De EditDroid was gebaseerd op het feit dat je van alles wat je had je er twee laserdiscs. Dus op het moment dat de ene laserdisc iets aan het afspelen was, kon de andere laserdisc opzoeken wat het volgende beeld zou moeten zijn.
One is transfer film directly to disk, or from 1 inch to disk by way of a telecine device. The system comes with 5 disc player interfaces and a switcher interface. And the advantage, obviously, of video disc is the fact that you can search out material with incredible speed. For example, if you took a video cassette, a 30-minute video cassette, and wound it on a very fast, the fastest 3/4-inch tape machines you can find, it takes about 2.5 minutes to go from end to end of that disc. On this system, you can take the same 30 minutes of material and go from end to end of the disc in less than 5 seconds.
So you would transfer from film to either tape or video disc and use that as your source.
Video in de Verenigde Staten gaat 30 frames, 30 beelden per seconde. En film gaat 24 beelden per seconde. EditDroid is degene geweest die dat probleem heeft opgelost. Omdat zij konden aangeven wat het echte filmbeeld was.
You would then be able to run it and cut it. You would be able to splice it together. Now these are very easy to do these days with computers, but in those days this was all new.
Hype it up. It'll show you from another point of view more about how that mouse works. Okay, there's Don Andrew's hand. I don't know why we call it a mouse. Sometimes I apologize. It started that way and we never did change it.
We didn't have a mouse, did we? We had a trackball. We had a trackball which moved the cursor around on the screen to the various buttons, and then you had a button beneath the trackball which was the command button. And it all seemed very strange because this really was before we had home computers. Up to that point, buttons were something physically that you touched. You reached over and you pressed it, or you pulled something with your hand, or you flipped a switch or something. And this idea that the commands were just on a screen and that you moved, like in a little video game, you moved a little cursor and then you said, I want that one. That was a very strange concept at first. And I can remember looking at it and thinking, is this going to really make sense to anybody?
EditDroid is a picture editing system so easy to use, so transparent, that editing choices are limited only by imagination.
Toen ik dat machine voor de eerste keer zag, dacht ik, dit is de toekomst van montage.
You found it in the database, and you clicked on it, and within a few seconds, you had that shot to review on the screen. So that you saved an enormous amount of time searching for material because it was all logged and then very accessible very quickly. It eliminated the hunting and the searching and the climbing up ladders to find boxes or going into the bottom of your trim bin to find one frame from the week before that you had left out.
What the EditDroid does would keep track of all your cuts and then be able to go back to film and accurately say, okay, here's how you cut the film, put it together, and then we'd screen it.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, works pretty well.
You may have to stop here. I think it'll open. I don't think you have to. Just drive up a little bit, just see if it opens. Yeah.
Okay, and your name, sir?
Sinclair, John Sinclair.
We gingen met het hele editorial department en een heleboel mensen van ILM gingen we naar Lucasfilm toe. In de projectiezaal hadden ze een EditDroid neergezet en een cam, dus een soort steenbek. Ze zouden samen een scène monteren en kijken wie het snelste was. En dat was dus heel interessant. Het was een scène die bestond uit 4 of 5 shots. En er werd dus gezegd, oké, start nu. En de dame die op de cam werkte en John op de EditDroid. En hij was natuurlijk klaar in 5 minuten, terwijl zij nog 10 minuten bezig was daarmee. Dus een soort wedstrijd om te laten zien hoe goed die EditDroid was.
The consumer camcorder was becoming available in the early 1980s, so I could shoot home movies or little documentaries, but I had no way to edit them together. But since the EditDroid was upstairs in the building and it wasn't being used very much, I immediately got interested in seeing if I could cut my little amateur movies on the EditDroid.
Ik heb toen gevraagd of dat apparaat naar ILM kon komen, naar het editorial van ILM. En ze hebben toen gezegd van ja, dat is misschien een goed idee.
So I started coming in after hours just to cut my own little videos. And they let me use the machine. So with John Sinclair's help, I was taught how to use the EditDroid for editing.
I guess I taught many editors how to use the droid. I was the coordinator, and one of the things to make the thing work, you had to teach people how to use it. One way to do this for me, and it worked well, was to become an assistant. There I would learn what the problems were, and there I'd be able to tutor or train the editors as they use the machine.
Er was niet veel employ voor het, niemand wilde ermee werken. De mensen die de commercials deden hadden geen zin om ermee te werken.
I was one of the few that was willing to experiment with it because, you know, I wasn't so proud of my editing ability that I didn't worry about making mistakes or having the system crash or having it fail in front of the producer, that sort of thing.
We never had any problems. Oh yes, one of the biggest problems in the early days was like with computers. It would stop working. It would crash, and we had crashes.
If anything, I was a test pilot, you know, flying it, and then I'd say, well, it didn't work. What can you do to make it better? And then I'd take it up again and fly it, you know. So it was kind of like that.
There is nothing worse than an editor is working along and the system crashes. You could hardly survive that. The editor would be in this frame of mind, locked into their little world, making this cut and crash. And he'd have to pull away from that while we come running in and try to get the thing going again. We used to have crashes. And I think they still have computer lockups today.
Those projects that I did from, say, 1983 to 1987, I think they actually revived the EditDroid project. My work really, I think, kept the development going because I was in the building where the development team was. I was tolerant of the problems. I didn't mind it if it failed. I just come back the next day and try it again. And it allowed us to work out a lot of the bugs in the system.
This is another step.
When you're cutting on film, you have an awareness that you have limitations because you know that it takes a long time to assemble a scene. It's difficult to change and trim. Therefore, I think you spend a little more time thinking ahead of time about where you're going to make your cuts.
Er zijn wat editors, net zoals Walter Murch, die zei van nou, als ik film aan het oprollen was, dan had ik altijd de beste gedachten. En als ze dus tegen mij zeggen van heb jij dat niet, dat je film beter vindt? Ik zeg, dat vind ik dus metafysische BS, metafysische bullshit, want het heeft niks te maken met het vak. Het is... als je aan het rollen bent, als je aan het omspoelen bent en je krijgt dan een goed idee. Jezelfde idee kun je krijgen als je even opstaat en naar de wc gaat of zo, weet je. Met film ga je dingen veel minder proberen omdat het zoveel tijd in beslag neemt. Met een EditDroid kun je zeggen van nou, laat ik eens even proberen of ik deze scène op die manier in elkaar kan zetten. En als je dan zegt van nee, werkt niet zo goed, dan ga je terug en begin je op een andere manier.
I learned very quickly and I know a lot of the skills that I acquired was because I had this tool which allowed me so much exercise. So I was able to spend my time editing, not hunting and searching for things.
De EditDroid en het elektronisch monteren heeft mij dus echt een betere editor gemaakt, vind ik. Ik kan nou alles doen wat ik wil doen. Als ik bedenk hoe ik een scène in elkaar wil zetten, dan is dat geen enkel probleem, want ik kan het doen. Met de EditDroid kon je voor het eerst een aantal dingen doen waar nooit iemand aan gedacht had. Als iemand de verkeerde kant op kijkt, dan kun je het beeld spiegelen en dan kijkt hij ineens de goede kant op.
When you cut and splice or cut and paste, eventually the film materials wear out. They get dirty, they get scratched. Every time you have a screening, the film, jumps through the projector and it's hard to see the cutting. With the EditDroid process, you are not consuming the film in any way. You could render your film to videotape and watch it and make judgments. Then you could go back and change it.
You had dissolves, fades. I forgot simple things like fade to black or wipes and those sort of effects would occur instantly. You didn't have to wait, like with film where you wouldn't see those until after but you could see them on the droid, so you could see what a fade to black looked like or a dissolve and you could experiment with those right live, so to speak, as you're cutting.
Officieel kon je die dingen vroeger ook doen, want je kon natuurlijk een optical maken, maar het nadeel daarvan is dat je moet wachten. Je moet kijken van misschien is dat een mogelijkheid dat ik die optical kan maken en dan moet je het negatief uit de roller laten halen, dan moet het opgestuurd worden naar het laboratorium, die moeten het in een optical printer doen, die moeten het omdraaien, dat moet weer ontwikkeld worden en dan krijg je het terug en dan doe je het erin en zeg je het werkt toch niet. En ondertussen zijn er 2 weken voorbij.
The Young Indiana Jones TV series was a project I was involved in for 4 years. I started out as second unit director on the series and an editor.
Hij was nog steeds van plan om Young Indiana Jones op 16 mm te doen en af te werken op 16 mm, dus zeg maar op een steenbek en dus gewoon film monteren. En ik zei tegen hem, je hebt die EditDroids, waarom probeer je die niet te gebruiken voor deze televisieserie? En ik heb hem toen uitgelegd wat ik dacht dat je zou kunnen doen.
We could save all the different cuts of the film. If you got down to the 3 or 4 cuts and something wasn't working well, you could always go back and review what the earlier cut was and see that maybe it was better or something. And that was very useful.
Commercials hadden veel visual effects, maar televisieseries had dat nog niet. Het was nog niet mogelijk, het was nog veel te duur om dat soort dingen te doen. En in dat opzicht is Indiana Jones, Young Indiana Jones, is echt een van de eerste series geweest waar dat soort dingen in gebeurden.
I thought it was very successful, the editorial work on the droids. The shows were done very quickly. We couldn't waste a lot of time cutting and recutting. You had to get shows done in, 6 weeks or something. I think we had a pretty short schedule. And with the droid, we were able to accomplish that pretty comfortably. I directed a show called Attack of the Hawkmen, which was a story of the World War I aviators. It had a lot of aerial photography, airplanes, fighting in the sky. A very hard thing to do on a TV show. And I shot the whole movie, but I didn't shoot any airplanes flying because there weren't any that we could find. And so to finish the show, I took little model airplanes and put them on sticks. And I went outside and just filmed with my video camera the planes flying against the sky. And I did all the things that I wanted the planes to do. And I transferred that into the EditDroid, then cut the scenes together, and I could make the action work. I could then show that and say I need exactly 110 shots, and here's what each shot will look like to work. And in the EditDroid, I could chroma key the planes against sky. I could do lots of things to create a temporary shot that was a proof of concept, something you couldn't do on film. And this was really useful, and it actually opened up the whole door to how Star Wars is done, because George Lucas saw the ability to invent new material in the editing room to sit there and look at the scene and say, okay, well, wouldn't it be nice if we really had a wide shot with the spaceships coming through, and, you know, it would be a whole new idea, and how can we see if that'll work? Well, we could create that shot on video somehow, a representative version of it, put it right into the cut, and he could see it. Then I got hired to edit 2 IMAX films. The IMAX films are shot on 65mm film, but they make a 35mm reduction, and then you would cut the 35 just like you'd cut a feature film. And so I thought it might be worth an experiment to see if we could use the EditDroid for some of the scenes as an experiment. And we made it work. We actually were able to cut about 10 minutes of the 40-minute IMAX film on the EditDroid. And so it worked successfully.
Het was een perfect systeem, het werkte perfect. Maar Avid die was flink aan de weg aan het timmeren met, ik geloof dat ik in 1987 voor het eerst een Avid heb gezien.
I'd like to show you the system right now.
Maar ze hadden nog niet opgelost hoe ze dat moesten doen met film. Dus Avid was heel belangrijk voor video en alles wat er in de televisiewereld gebeurde, maar ze hadden absoluut geen idee hoe ze in de filmwereld konden komen.
The connection between Avid and the EditDroid is a bit of a mystery to me. Now, there may be some people that know the answers to it.
Why the Avid succeeded and the EditDroid didn't is we didn't have the large mass storage devices.
Op een gegeven ogenblik had George geen zin meer om geld te investeren in die EditDroid. En toen Avid om de hoek kwam en liet zien dat ze met harddrives en met hun software alles een beetje beter konden doen, dacht hij van nou, als ik dat integreer met wat ik al bedacht heb, dan hebben we een zeer goed montagesysteem.
We were running with discs, laser discs, and tape machines, not mass storage. Avid came in and they had that, and that was powerful. You could then store everything in memory, in digital memory, like a computer. And that was strong, and it was faster, and it became more reliable. And so it was a timing, technology timing involved. And I think the Droid, George's concept was just a little ahead of its time because we didn't quite have the technology to do exactly what Avid then was later to do.
My recollection is that because the EditDroids weren't being sold to many customers, that as a business venture, it failed.
Dus de EditDroid heeft hij verkocht aan Avid en heeft een aantal aandelen van Avid gekregen. Omdat ik een van de weinigen was die echt alles wist van de EditDroid, ben ik met een EditDroid naar Tewksbury in Massachusetts gegaan, waar Avid, de hoofdkwartier van Avid is. En ik heb daar 2 weken aan alle technici van Avid uitgelegd hoe de EditDroid werkte en wat het goede systeem was van een EditDroid.
Yeah, our work was over. Yeah, that was it. I think it was almost that simple. The droid just disappeared. I just like this building. But I'll never forget my first time walking in there. What do you do?
Okay, here? Yeah? You want the entire house?
Yeah, don't go zooming. Okay?
Yeah. One more?
That's okay.
Just one more. I think I moved it.
Oh, okay. I'll go the other hand, then I'll go. Yeah, this is sort of fun. Like I say, this might be my last time. Yeah. Today is extremely important because whole films, Star Wars Episode 3, are done digitally. They're shot digitally, they're cut digitally. It's important as in that sense that it was history, that it was a development. It had to occur, or we wouldn't have what we have today.
De elektronische montage heeft een ontzettende invloed gehad op montagestijlen.
It opened up a door to a whole world of creativity that we never could have discovered had we stayed on film, because film was too restrictive. Whereas using the video technology and then, of course, more recently, the digital technology that's available, you're able to do all of these things right on the editing platform itself. And you can make movies right in the editing room in a way you never could have done another way. And we were doing it on the EditDroid back, 20 years ago. It was a little more clumsy, but it worked. And that was where we saw the possibilities.
Op het moment dat je eraan werkt, aan zo'n apparaat, heb je niet het idee dat je aan iets werkt wat revolutionair is en wat een hele belangrijke stap is in de ontwikkeling van de elektronische montage. Achteraf gezien denk je van ja, het is echt stom dat we niet zo'n apparaat bewaard hebben. En ja, dat is, zo gaan dat soort dingen.
It's always sad for me when I see technology become obsolete. And over the years, I've seen the moviola disappear. I've seen the flatbed editing machines disappear. Occasionally, I'd see one in the trash or broken up and parts of it in the hallway somewhere. And when I think of the EditDroid, I wanted to see it preserved. So I always worry that unless we really do something with these things, put them in a museum or something, that they will just disappear. Often when those technologies are replaced, you don't think about their importance. You just, well, it's old, just throw it away.
There are no EditDroids that I know of up and working today, which is a shame. It's like tearing down an old historical building and losing sight of where it was. It's gone. George himself had us put away one carefully. George has got one stowed away in his archive. George has a tremendous archive, a whole building of archives, every prop he ever used sort of in this building. And in there somewhere is an EditDroid. So there is one, but it's not working. And I believe it could be made to work, but it is not.
It was at one time over there. So here it is.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, now.
Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Well, that's what we expected to find it buried. This is not part of it. I think if you don't mind,
we can redistribute some of this stuff.
If we could pull some stuff out just so they get a better shot. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Can I take this wrap off? Okay.
Oh yeah.
This particular EditDroid is one of the last two ever in service, and he probably has done a dozen or 15 films on this particular droid, especially the Young Indie series on this one. Now, it's not fair to what you, it's not, I don't like this picture at all because it is not fair. This is not part of it, but that is the droid, and can we see? Let's Bruce, let's slide this out and see if we get it. Did that swing open? Yeah, a little bit. Oh yeah. Okay, that's the disc drives. And they're missing. That's usually full. But VD1, VD2, and the time-based switch matrix, a planet. Remember I told you there's a thing called the planet? Yeah. Connects to the Sun microprocessor. Yeah. That's the planet. That's the in-house developed control for the whole system. And the whole system, you could have many of these cabinets. They'd go down like half a dozen of them in a row, and we didn't save those, I guess. No. And I'm sorry, but here are the now. Where's the chem-like touchpad? Do you see a thing that looks like a control?
No, these are the big disk drive thing.
That's a disk drive. That's part of it.
Yeah.
But do you see? There's no. Oh, don't tell me the.
There's no touchpads.
No touchpad. The touchpad shows you the heart of the thing. Yeah. The thing that, with the knob and all that stuff. I'm sorry, there's not. I'd hate to try to get anything going on this. No, this snake, this is typical of the way we used to hook it up. This is just a huge table, but there used to be snake cables like this all over the place, and it used to be our job to get around and figure out how they connect. We take this to different places to cut a show, and then you'd have to hook up all these things. Oh, it's sort of sad. Let me out of here. I can't. I'm going to cry.
Well, we We have some other moviolas back there, but that's about it. No, that's all we got here. Yeah.
Oh, geez. I didn't leave it that bad. It was better than that when I left it there. That's just sad that it's just gone. It's part of history gone. They don't allow you out of here.
I always think of things in a positive sense. I think the EditDroid was definitely the beginning of an era because it was the moment in which we stepped away from traditional physical film as our medium in which we work. And we began to go into the realm of really what has become the computer-controlled realm of production. And because so many things have been built on top of that idea now, that you can't escape the idea that the EditDroid was one of the very first devices to give us a glimpse of what would lie ahead in time.
There you are. Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you. I would make it a beginning. I would make it a beginning. It did kill the moviola, and so it ended one and started another.